Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Night Tours. We are your guides on this magical journey through the Monday Night Wars. I am Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Hogan.
What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday season.
Yes, hopefully, Merry Christmas, I think. Hopefully you guys had a nice Christmas, Hanukkah. I'm not sure when Kwanzaa falls, but let's hope that was
I think Kwanzaa's after. I think Kwanzaa happens around now.
Okay, well, happy Kwanzaa to those of you who celebrate, and it's an exciting time for us, Kyle, because this is we're reviewing, of course, the final Nitro of 1995, and there's no Raw, so it's going to be a little bit shorter of a show, but we got plenty to talk about with Nitro, and it's been an exciting 1995, Kyle. I'm looking forward to 1996.
Oh, I mean, as far as we're talking about WCW, right? We're not talking about it's been a great WWF 95.
It hasn't been the most ideal 95 for WWF, but we're going to get Michaels back soon enough, and hopefully that'll start to put things in the right direction. It may take a while, but we're speaking of this, Kyle, we're now just about 3 months in. This is our 16th episode, and what better time to do a yearly awards show? The Wrestling Observer and Wrestling Torch and those kind of things like to do their Wrestlers of the Year, Feuds of the Year, that whole thing. So why not do a Monday Night Wars version of that? And that's what we're going to bring to you guys. So New Year's Day, that's January 1. Look for our.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
I don't want other people. The
Monday,
Chinese,
the Monday before the next.
It's not
Monday Night Tours.
It's not the Chinese New Year. It's going to be the American New Year, January 1st, the day before our 1996 review drops. We'll have our awards show drop for you. So we'll have a little bit of fun. Obviously, we're only going to have about 3 months. So if we say Wrestler of the Year is Hulk Hogan, and you're like, well, he did nothing for the first 8 months. Well, you know what? We don't care about those first 8 months.
Nope, they don't exist.
They do not exist to us. Of course, going forward next year when we review 96, then, at the end of next year, we'll have a full calendar year of the Wars to do all this on. So,
to put in perspective, I don't even think Diesel's on our list for Wrestler of the Year, and he was the WWF champion the entire year.
The entire year, yeah. Yeah, so something to look forward to. But, in the meantime, Kyle, let's just get into it and discuss the December 25th, 1995 edition of Monday Nitro. Of course, Raw was preempted as typical for Raw back in the day. A lot of holidays and stuff like that. They wouldn't even put out a show. And Kyle, we are live. We're not live, but we are coming to you from, you know what? They're not going to tell us that we're live, nor are they going to tell us where they're from, because it is a pre-recorded show, and it looks like it's the same location as last week. And
Augusta, Maine.
Augusta, Maine. Augusta, Georgia, of course, home of the Masters. And you can tell that this is where it is, Kyle, because you start to recognize some of the fans. I noticed the guy dressed like Hogan in the front row early on, and at that point I was like, okay, it confirmed what I thought. They just recorded a second episode, which makes perfect sense. But, Kyle, they're at least smart enough to change up their gear, right? You got Santa Pepe, of course, Pepe rocking the little Santa Claus outfit with the beard and all. Heenan's wearing a stocking, and Eric Bischoff is wearing glasses. I think that
to show that time had passed. Yeah, and then Mean Gene's basically, I think he's rocking the same suit. He just has a hat on.
Classic Gene. I didn't, I gotta be honest, I didn't even pay attention to Gene's outfit, but you're probably right. It's probably the same thing other than the hat.
Hey, he's too old for this shit. He brought one suit to Augusta, Georgia. All right.
Can't blame him for that. Kyle, then we get our opening match. Lex Luger back out here. So he's got
in the same muscles as last week.
Yeah, and he's wrestling Scotty Riggs. So this time he will be going against Marcus Bagwell's tag team partner of the American Males. So we've got Luger back-to-back weeks wrestling the American Males, and Interesting enough, Kyle, Bagwell's not around for this match. If you remember, Scotty Riggs wasn't around for half of the match last week and then just kind of appeared. Bagwell never appears here.
He's still reeling from his loss quote unquote last week.
Right. The match, there's not a whole ton to talk about with the match, Kyle. You and I both immediately realized that there's someone in a bee mascot costume or something in the crowd. Not sure if that's a fan, somebody from the arena or what, but it was very distracting.
It was distracting, and also it was also just funny because I don't remember that bee at all from last week's show.
Yeah, I don't either. So it's kind of interesting.
I bet you I do. What if WCW purposely put it in there to make it look like they're in a different place?
Like a different spot? Then kudos to Bischoff or whoever came up with that idea.
If it was a genius idea, it was probably Mongo.
That's right. This match, though, Kyle, typical. It was very similar to last week, where the American male dominates Luger for majority of the match, as you would expect for the guy who's going to be in a triangle match and the New Japan World Cup match and a potential World Championship match all at Starrcade 2 days later. Other than Luger getting dominated, there's not a whole lot to say about this match. I thought there was a cool little spot that Scotty Riggs kind of grabbed him for like an arm takeover, but he like jumped over the top rope and brought Luger's arm down on the rope. I thought it was kind of a neat spot you don't see all the time. Other than that, I think Scotty Riggs missed a couple of big drop kicks, and that pretty much did him in. And
yeah, at this point, if you miss with a regular drop kick and you're out of commission for a good 5 minutes, imagine he went for a top rope missile drop kick, and that's basically death in the world of wrestling.
Total suicide. Needless to say, it led to the torture rack and Lex Luger's eventual win. I give this match a 1.5 stars, Kyle. I still think it's weird the way they're booking Lex to not be dominant in these matches that he should dominate. And, because, I guess in kayfabe, it's like if he can barely handle Scotty Riggs, what makes you think that he can beat whatever talent New Japan is going to throw at him in this World Cup tournament? And then ultimately the triangle match, and then, ultimately if he wins both, it doesn't have to win the New Japan match, I suppose, but at least the triangle match to go on and beat Macho Man. Just don't really understand it. What did you think about the match?
Well, I think I gave the match between him and Bagwell a 1.75 stars, and I actually thought this match was a little bit better. Yes, Scotty Riggs did show a decent amount of talent and offense in this match. I don't think Lex looked as much of a buffoon as last week, though. So for that, I think whatever offense he was doing, he seemed like Lex was more frustrated than it looked like he was being handled. So I think he played it off a little bit better. So I thought it actually wasn't a bad match. No one really screwed up their spots. The match was the starter match, and I know they weren't going head-to-head against Raw, but they always seem to try to at least make the beginning match, kind of set the tone for the whole show. But yeah, I do agree that Lex has yet to really look dominating in any of those matches. But I felt like that this was more appropriate to have, this not be too one-sided. I also did give the commentators a little bit of credit because they definitely were talking up Lex enough, even while he was kind of, not being dominant, to make him sound dominant. So it was actually hard to notice. So I actually want to give the commentators during this match a little bit of credit because they were riding on Lex as far as how good he was and how in shape he is. That I actually bumped this up to a 2-star match.
Well, there you have it. And, it's nice to give commentary credit when credit is due because we sure as hell rip them enough throughout these reviews. So got to give them props when they do their job correctly. Following the match, Kyle, we get Mean Gene with an interview with Sting. And Mean Gene opens up by saying, "I hope you get a Christmas goose, Heenan," which I thought was a little uncalled for. Heenan didn't say anything Mean Gene's way. Mean Gene's a little, snarky this week.
See, here's the thing. I don't even know how that's like... That's a dig. Like, I want a Christmas goose. That sounds like that'd be delicious.
Apparently, you want either a turkey or a Christmas ham, and a Christmas goose it's just a derogatory. The only way I know it was derogatory is Mean Gene said it with such disdain in his voice.
Right? Yeah. Mean Gene's definitely the super face commentator. So if he's gonna talk shit, if he's gonna mention Heenan, it's gonna be in an insulting way.
Absolutely. So. He opens up asking Sting about Luger, and Sting, of course, says he's sick and tired of these Luger questions. And he says, "What are you, an investigative reporter?" And Gene says, "Yeah, if I have to be." So you really got to appreciate that Gene's on the streets, trying to find out the information, always the ongoings of what's going on in the locker room.
Might as well call him Gene Parmesan.
They bring up Flair, and of course Sting says he hasn't forgotten about Flair. Of course, Flair turned his back on Sting, with the whole Horseman reunion. And then they actually do mention this whole World Cup match, Kyle, which was nice to see because, Starrcade's 2 days away and you really don't know anything about it other than that there's a tournament of some sort. And he says that the Japanese don't stand a chance here in America because we're in the good US of A, brother.
Yeah, and I'm almost okay with it, and the only reason why is because it's the same formula that they usually do is they spend so much time focused on the main event of all these
it's their
different
typical
pay-per-views.
It's their typical
It's very
formula
typical.
for sure, yeah. And then as the interview ends, Gene says, one more time, let's ask about Lex Luger. So just trying to get one more jab in there from Gene's side. After this, Kyle, we get Big Bubba versus Sting. And, of course, it would make sense since Sting was out there interviewing that he just heads to the ring, right?
Well, that's how they always do it. That's every single time that he's at an interview and goes to the ring and has a match, he goes right to the ring. So this was kind of weird that they decided to have this be different this week.
Yeah, we come back and Big Bubba heads to the ring, and then Sting shows up afterwards. And I had to laugh. I don't know if you noticed, Kyle, when Sting shows up, he's got those they're like scorpion lights that can shine down on the floor, the aisleway on his way to the ring. And he seemed like he had just seen it for the first time and was amazed by it. Just totally blown away at the fact that there's scorpions being illuminated on the ground.
And he would have thought that if you ever, this is when you know you've made it in this business.
All right. I did notice, I don't know if you noticed too, he has the same face paint that he had last week.
Yeah, I know. I didn't mention it, but I did notice.
So again, this is obviously going to be, Sting kind of squashing Big Bubba, but I thought for the most part it was a decent match for the two of them. I had to laugh at one point. Sting no-sells one of Big Bubba's moves. I don't remember what it was. A kick of some sort. Something where he thought he knocked him down. And he does it, turns around and kind of goes to the second rope and taunts the crowd. And Sting gets up and starts flexing, no-selling. Randy Anderson, grabs at the Big Bubba and, tells him to get down. Randy Anderson was not a fan of Big Bubba taunting at that point. And I guess, if you want to taunt, you can taunt. I don't see why the ref
I think he just did a shoulder tackle. I think that's all he did. He just kind of knocked him down, and then he went to the middle rope to taunt.
But Randy Anderson was not happy about that. You know what, though? Heenan brought up an interesting point, Kyle, that Tommy Lasorda, of course, manager the Cardinals at the time. I don't know who Lasorda was.
No, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Was he the Dodgers? Yeah, okay. He endorsed the Japanese contingent in the New Japan.
Right. The reason why he said that was because he was talking about during the time. This is 1995. This is when Hideo Nomo was a big deal, and he was the pitcher for the Dodgers.
Yeah, good call. Good call there. It's always nice to get those baseball up-to-date references.
That's what I'm here for. You can do the football stuff. I'll give you the baseball.
And then Kyle, the commentary team, in the middle of the match, they bring up Hulk Hogan, as you would expect to come up in Nitro. And, of course, Hulk Hogan will be suspended for... Wait, what? He is suspended? Literally, was there any announcement prior to this other than that he was on probation and you knew last week he was on thin ice with the chair shots? They just casually throw out there that he's suspended now for the rest of 1995.
That's why it's casual. For 6 days.
For 6 days. He'll be back on January 1st, apparently.
Which is the next Nitro.
Yeah, exactly. Bobby Heenan, though, if he had his way, Hogan would be banned forever, as you would imagine Heenan to say. Ultimately, though, Kyle, I kind of like the way this match finished up. I think Sting was up at the top rope, and it looked like Bossman, or Big Bubba, excuse me.
I was say, careful there.
Kind of was going to grab him and almost suplex him off the top, and Sting kind of curled him up down into a schoolboy sort of roll up pin. It was a unique way of pinning for a 3 count. So I kind of like the finish, and I gotta say the one thing, Kyle, most of these matches in WCW end differently. They don't, they're not always won by finishers. There's a lot of DQ finishes and stuff, but there's a lot of schoolboys and random moves that guys win on. So for that, I feel like they do have anybody can win at any time with any sort of maneuver, and I kind of appreciate that. As for this match itself, I gave it 2 stars. I thought for Sting versus Bubba, you knew it was going to happen. Sting's on a roll, Kyle, so of course he's going to win. And I like the unique finish.
I gave it a star and 3/4. I honestly enjoyed the Lex match more. And I think that was mainly because Bubba really didn't give Sting any favors. I understand that Bubba's offense is going to be limited, but I've seen Bubba in matches before. I think when he was taking on Hawk, and I think you remember I said I actually gave him credit for his athleticism and his speed in that match.
Yeah, he does have.
He is a flash in the pan when it comes to. He really showed that none at all. There was a lot of cartoony, like every single time Sting would do a move that would kind of like slam his face to the ground. He would just oversell it. And it was just kind of kooky. And once again, but really all Bubba's offense was a couple punches and shoulder tackles. So this was more like Sting earned all 1 3/4 stars for me. I think if there was any sort of, I said I do gave it a little extra too because it was nice to see Sting have to outsmart somebody instead of the Stinger Splash into the Scorpion Deathlock. Once again, it was kind of the same way that he beat Malenko a couple weeks ago. But once again, we're not trying to also push and make Bubba look good. So because of that, I was a little confused with the finish anyways, because I felt, once again, you want to make them look strong. So finish strong and, kind of doing like this roll up in the top rope. But once again, they're selling this as a, Sting could easily win this 3-way match, whatever they want to call this, the triangle match, a triple threat or whatever they call it.
Triangle match, Kyle, triangle.
Yeah, triangle match. Sorry. That it could easily be won by just a real quick pin, like a roll up. So to that, it was interesting. However, if I were to match up, the Luger match and the Sting match, I will say I was more in tuned and enjoyed the ending better of the Luger match. So if Luger gets 2 stars, Sting, unfortunately, you're going to get 1 3/4 for me.
All right. And then, of course, as we're fading to commercial after this match, Kyle, you just hear Mongo out of nowhere go, "I love this chaos." Which I thought was
he loves to get the last word before every commercial break.
He absolutely does. What I found weird was there was no chaos. Sting just won a match against Big Bubba, and that's where we were going to commercial. So
when did you think Mongo ever said anything that had substance or relevance?
Not fair enough. We come back after the commercial, Kyle, and me and Gene's out there interviewing Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart.
Why? He could have interviewed him after his original match, and then Sting once again, is this whole the timing seems weird that Lex has a match and then they interview Sting,
and then Sting has a match and they interview Lex. Right? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. But Gene opens up ripping on Jimmy Hart's shoes, saying they look like bowling shoes. So I gotta say, Kyle, they don't call him Mean Gene for nothing. The dude is ruthless.
This is true, and I started to think too that maybe the reason why they switched the interviews around is because it would give Lex Luger enough time to catch his breath, so he didn't sound like a doofus
winded
on the
like he was last week. Yeah,
right.
Of course, Gene asks, "What's the deal with Sting?"
Thank you. I'm glad you said it that way.
Basically, Luger says we've been friends for years, and then he starts talking about the triangle match, and I gotta say, he goes on and talks about how he's the uncrowned champion. And then Jimmy takes over. And I got to say, for the Lex promo portion, it was about as good as you could expect or hope for from Lex. So props to him there. And as Jimmy Hart's getting ready to talk, of course, Kyle, we're interrupted by the great Pitbull Pittman. And you might ask why. Well, if you remember, Pittman is looking for a manager. And he says, "Jimmy Hart, I would like you to manage me. You're a great manager." And, he also opens up talking about how sexy and amazing and awesome Lex Luger is, really, really being his number one fan. Sort of how Todd Pettengill was to Michaels a few weeks back.
And you also noticed that last week he was also trying to help hold back the Giant, who is also managed by Jimmy Hart. He was definitely trying to butter himself up some Jimmy Hart this past 2 weeks, for sure.
He sure was. So, of course, Jimmy Hart, being the savvy manager, wants only the top talent, says, "Take off your shirt." So,
which is kind of a weird thing to ask, but okay,
little weird.
We'll go.
So Pittman takes off his shirt and he says, "Look at that! Now look at the total package, Lex Luger. Why the hell would I ever manage you? You're basically called him a fat, out of shape slob, which is kind of mean. But
your words, not his.
Fair enough. And then Pittman says, "I'm not through. I will find someone still," and he storms off. So apparently you can mark Bobby Heenan, and now you can mark Jimmy Hart off the list of potential candidates to manage the great Pitbull Pittman. We'll have
to stay tuned for Colonel Parker
yeah, right.
and someone else. But I did like that later on in the show, and I don't think we have it on the notes, but I wanted to give the credit to it that Heenan actually shoots a little bit on this and says that there's a reason why Jimmy Hart declined him, because the whole point of a manager is the manager goes after the talent. If the talent goes after a manager, then all that shows the manager is that they're desperate.
They're desperate.
And that they need them more than they need the talent. And so that puts Hart at an advantage. Like, why would I just take you on if I already didn't think of you as a worthwhile commodity? So for that, Heenan, I tip my hat to you, because that was actually a very good point, and I like that he still stays heel, but yet still makes a lot of sense on the show from the heel perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great point. And then, Kyle, we get the next segment, of course, our WCW Saturday Night promo as the music hits. Oh, wait, I'm kidding. That's actually Dean Malenko's music. And
gets me every time.
It caught me, too. Dean Malenko coming out against Mr. JL, or as the graphic says, just JL. So I'm like, oh, they must have changed his name. But then Mongo starts to call him Mr. JL. And then, of course, Heenan uses the Just Lucky again. So I have no idea what they're calling him.
Bishop actually kind of bodges it and calls him Jerry, but then quickly fixes it. He was like, Jerry JL. So I think no one knows what to call this guy. Just take off the mask and call him Jerry Lynn, and let's be done with it.
Right. The match itself, Kyle, was short, probably 3.5 minutes, give or take.
I think when I timed it was about 3:40. I think it was.
But as you could expect from these two wrestlers, some great spots, some great action. Really, I mean, it was a quick match, but it was an entertaining match for what it was. And I gotta say, Kyle, one thing I noticed, Bischoff, to his credit, he can call moves. I kind of bashed Vince. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago now, about how Vince just says, what a maneuver the whole time, or that's a nice maneuver.
And if he knows the move, then he lets you know he knows the name of the move.
Bischoff was calling a lot of this stuff. Maybe he's a little wrong on some of the terminology, but I give Bischoff credit. I think he's a better play-by-play guy than Vince. Vince may be a little more entertaining, especially with like his rapport with Lawler or something like that, but I think Bischoff's a decent play-by-play guy that I don't think he gets credit enough for that.
But once again, I think that's the whole point of it, is that you have 3 people on the show. You're supposed to have the guy that's calling the match. Then you've got the face perspective and the heel perspective. Whereas Vince, I think, still plays more of the face perspective while trying to call the match. And then you've got Lawler, which is him, and I sometimes have a hard time. I feel like Jerry Lawler at his best can rival Heenan, but I think Heenan's probably one of the best heel commentators of all time.
Yeah,
but I think when Lawler really sets his mind to it, he's actually really, really good at it.
Heenan, they're two different type of heel commentators, the two of them. Heenan goes for the low hanging fruit with the.
Well, I feel like Heenan goes for the "it's sad but true" kind of stuff, where the stuff he says is not really joking. He's kind of being mean, and then Lawler is more I guess animated. He's laughing maniacally.
Yeah, he's more cartoonish with it and stuff.
Yes, exactly.
That said, Kyle, there's not a whole lot to call with this match. Eventually, Malenko does like a top rope gutbuster, which you've seen Malenko do before, and then he leads it into what they call the Malenko lock. I think they kind of twist their legs around and whatever. And Heenan says there's more legs there than a pantyhose convention, which I gotta say was a little weak. I think you could have done better, Heenan.
That's a Mongo thing to say.
That is a Mongo thing to say. For me though, Kyle, 2 stars. Very entertaining match. I think if this match was like as long as any of the other matches that happened tonight, it could have been a 3 or 3.5 star match. But 2 stars for what it was.
And I kind of agree, although I still think because I still have to give it 2.5. I still think it's the best match of the night so far. And if I'm going to give Luger 2, I can't really give it much. I can't give this 2. So I gave it 2.5. And once again, I always look for matches like this. I always check, do they screw up their spots? Really, nobody did. Both of them looked good. Nobody looked like they really got over much harder than the other. But Malenko overall just is being booked very strongly. I think that Malenko is up there with Eddie Guerrero as far as being booked in the correct way. The only person that I'm wishing that they did a better job with is Benoit, especially considering that he's the fourth horseman, yet we haven't seen him since that announcement that he was the fourth horseman, at least not on Nitro. But yeah, I said I've yet to really see Malenko look buried in any match, and that even includes a losing effort against Sting. So that also says a lot to you that not even against the mega face does Malenko get squashed. I also enjoyed at the end Malenko looks in the camera. I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, is Malenko gonna like cut like a quick little spot here? Like, is he gonna say something? He puts his finger up in the air, like stares at the camera, and you can tell in his you can see the gears in his head, like I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say, and then he finally just goes, "That's one." And I almost just paused it and just gave like a standing ovation because I'm like, that right there is Dean Malenko's personality there.
Yeah, it really is. Malenko, if he had any sort of personality, could have been a much bigger star than he was for sure.
Oh my god, he would have been up there with. I mean, let's be honest here. He had a great career. I mean, honestly, in the cruiserweight division and everything else, like if they wanted someone to go out there and like entertain the crowd with the moves and with pure wrestling, he's about as good as anybody on the show.
Sure.
So yeah, if that guy just knew how to be just a 1/100th of Sting, he could have been, and also if maybe he was about 4 inches taller.
Yeah, I mean he really, size was against him too, but
I think he was actually a little taller than JL, which is also saying a lot.
Right. That's it, Kyle. After the match, we get our contractually obligated segment of the night where me and Gene interviews Ric Flair. Ric Flair starts to talk, and Jimmy Hart comes out and apologizes basically to Flair for Kevin Sullivan's interference last week and how he tried to get into the faces of the Horsemen. Says, he kind of got a temper. Don't worry about him. And then Jimmy Hart says that he owes Flair for saving his life, Kyle. And, Jimmy Hart pays his debts. He wants to make it up to Flair for saving his life. And he asked that he, be ringside with Ric Flair tonight for the world title match, which, Jimmy Hart represents Lex Luger. So you would think that maybe there's something a little fishy there, but Rick says, no, go ahead, come on down. I'd like, be honored to have you down there watching me win the world title. So Rick, I got to say, for a 12, I think at the time 11-time champion, you think you'd be a little bit smarter about that. I don't know.
I mean, once again, I don't need me to go ahead. It's not like really Jimmy Hart did anything against Flair. But yeah, I feel like the beginning thing is, oh, you're going to have this match against Lex Luger, the guy I represent. So can I come down and watch you win the title? That just seems like a weird thing to ask for.
But he says go ahead and do it. So, Kyle, we get our world title match. Flair, who's represented with Jimmy Hart now, against the Macho Man Randy Savage. Mongo says you better get that leftover turkey out of your mouth so you don't choke before this match starts. So thanks, Mongo, for looking out for us. And, Kyle, I don't know if you saw or not, they kind of zoom up on the big gold belt, and Hogan's name is still plated on the belt. I saw it there, and I just find that kind of shitty for Macho Man, the fact that
his whole reign is not going to have his name on the belt.
Right, just silly.
And what's also funny, too, is that Hogan, it would totally make sense if they didn't want to waste the time if they knew that Hogan was just going to win the title at Starrcade. He's not even on the card.
Right, he has no chance of winning the title, so I don't know. I thought it was weird as well. And I missed what happened, but I heard them mention the name Hank. Were they talking about Hank Williams? Do you know?
I don't remember anything about this.
They said something about Hank, and then Heenan goes, Hank? He's like, just think, you had 9 months to name a child, and you went with Hank. And it just cracked me up. But the match itself, Kyle, was pretty entertaining. I mean, you got Flair and you got Macho Man. It makes sense that they put on a good match together. At one point, Macho Man early on actually starts to put on the figure 4 onto Flair, and Mongo goes, he's reversing the figure 4. And I'm like, no, Mongo, he's just applying the figure 4. Bischoff rips on Jimmy Hart, calls him a maggot. And Heenan was so somber and serious, was like, that's not a maggot, that's the mouth of the South. So Heenan just sometimes his dry humor is just it gets good chuckles from me. Is there anything you want to point out about this match in particular, Kyle?
Randy Anderson is totally the fourth horseman.
He has to be, right? So we both noticed that he's like, eventually Flair's putting on the figure 4, and Randy Anderson's like pinning Macho Man to the ground. What was that about?
Yeah, like he's over here like, Macho Man's trying to like squirm out and try to turn him over, and then there's this Randy Anderson just like draped over him like he's trying to win the world title. And it was just
it was so weird. I'm like, what is he doing? I'm like, at first I'm like, okay, maybe he's trying to help, and then he just like slams him down. He's like holding him down. I'm like, what are you doing, Randy?
Yeah, no, I mean there were times where I think Macho Man pulled out probably the most cushiony chair he could ever find in the front row. Like he was going to attack Flair with an extreme cushioned metal chair. And, Randy was having none of that. Randy was almost as much involved in this match as anybody else in that match.
As Randy Savage.
I get it.
Yeah, right. Also, Mongo tried talking about taking Jimmy Hart's megaphone and shoving it up his ass. And as he's getting to that point, Heenan and Bishop were like, "Oh, hey."
Only Ric Flair can say ass,
right,
on Nitro.
Ultimately, Kyle, of course, Jimmy Hart will interfere in this match. He gets up on the apron, which leads Macho Man to deck him. And ultimately, Luger's going to come in and run in for the DQ finish. I really enjoyed the match, and I gave it 2 3/4 stars. I would have given it more, Kyle, but I hate the run-in DQ. It was predictable. You saw it coming a mile away, especially with Jimmy Hart being down at ringside. Obviously, I don't think Flair was going to win with Starrcade 2 days away. If you're going to change titles, you change it there. But not too bad. A pretty solid main event.
Yeah, I actually gave it a 3 1/4. And the reason why I say that is because they gave them both enough time to have a good match. I think that both of them played to their strengths. You had Macho Man, who's very good at putting over the heels and being able to, basically, play with or wrestle with anybody. And it's not just anyone. It's not like I'm giving Flair less credit. It's Ric Flair. Ric Flair doesn't need someone to carry him in a match. But I just thought to myself, like, if this match is going to be anywhere near as good as the one that we're going to see at Starrcade, then it's going to be a good match. You can tell the chemistry's there. I know you're not going to see a lot of fast speed. Like there's not going to be a whole lot of quick pins and things like Malenko. Malenko, we always give credit because you feel like there's not a lot of wasted motion. There's going to be some wasted motion with Flair and Macho because there is some bravado to both of them. So every once in a while they are going to pander and they are going to catch their breath. But Flair also is just documented as being one of the most highest endurance wrestlers of all time. This is a guy that could probably wrestle for 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and be totally fine with it. But overall, it was Macho, having some good offense, followed by Flair doing the low blows, at the right times, thumb to the eyes. Just a classic match. The DQ ending was appropriate because you're going to go in there and showcase all the world title participants. The moment that Macho decked Jimmy Hart, I was waiting for Luger to come out. So so from that, I understand maybe you rate it lower because you're calling the ending a mile away. But at the same time, you didn't want Macho to get a pinning victory and get over on Flair, and at the same time, you didn't want Flair to win the title. So what do? You do something that causes all 4 guys to get into the ring, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, I mean, so after the match, of course, Sting does run in, and he's immediately attacked by Flair. Eventually, Flair and Luger are tossed out of the ring, and you got Sting and Macho Man. Naturally, Macho Man's still skeptical and paranoid, and him and Sting get into like a pushing and slapping match that eventually go nose to nose, and that's how the show ends, Kyle, and closes things out. And now we're 2 days away. This is the go home show for Starrcade. Starrcade, of course, is this Wednesday, the 27th. And for me, Cal, this is an okay show. I thought the matches were pretty good, top to bottom, not too bad. I always judge go home shows a little bit stronger, and 90% of this card is the the New Japan versus USA World Cup, and you wouldn't even know it. And, that's typical of their stuff. It's all about the triangle match and then ultimately the world title match following it. So it was a little weak in that regard, but overall, not a bad show. I think I preferred the previous 2 weeks to this, at least last week to this one, but not a bad show. What'd you think?
So, to me, I thought this was actually a lot better show than I think you're giving it credit for. And I think once again it comes down to we know their formula. We know that they're going to be pushing the mega heels and faces. I don't think anybody in America is going to care too much about the card. Me and you and I, maybe from a purist standpoint, would love to know who Eddie Guerrero is facing. Hell, I'm right now. If someone's listening to this podcast, they are just now been reminded that Eddie Guerrero is part of this. We don't know everybody, I think, that's in it yet. I think only thing we know is Eddie Guerrero, Macho Man, Luger, and Sting. I think that's all we know so far. So that means there's still two more people that are in the. There's 7 matches altogether.
Right, and I know Benoit's in it because I've started watching that one, but I think Johnny B. Bad may have been announced.
I thought Alex Wright was in one too.
Alex Wright is in it as well, but I thought Johnny B. Bad was announced on one of the shows to be in it. But
okay, well, once again, if we're talking about this is the show that you and I are doing, we wouldn't know that because we're basically just focusing on Nitro and Raw. So it's kind of one of those things where I think that what Raw usually does a better job of doing is recapping and reminding you what the card is and getting you ready for it and promoting the card in its entirety.
WCW needs a Doc Hendricks to give us the Slam Jam.
They do. They need some cocaine in their lives. But I thought this was actually a great send-off show because once again, it's showcasing the main event. It's showcasing the triangle match. On top of it, we had a very good Malenko match, even though I wish that they had more time for it. I'm sure they could have taken 2 or 3 minutes away from the Flair match to the Macho Man Flair match to probably give it a little bit more. But really, there wasn't a lot to critique outside of Bubba and his lack of mobility this week and just lack of moveset. But everything looks hot going into Starrcade. Everybody looks like they're on that roll. So that's really what the show was supposed to showcase. So I thought it was actually a very good send-off show.
And Nielsen ratings kind of supported that, Kyle. It was a 2.5, down a little bit from the 2.7 last week. But you got to remember, this is it is uncontested with Raw, so that helps it. But it's also Christmas night. Not going to be the huge night for people to sit around the TV and watch it, but solid week, and they've been putting up some pretty good numbers to close out the 1995. So not a bad 95 for Nitro, Kyle. And we're going to look forward to what's happening in 1996 as we go forward. And not only are we going to do the Nitros, of course, we'll have the 1996 episodes of Raw coming up. And we'll be right back next week with the January 1 editions. We got the Raw Bowl and, of course, Nitro. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go find us on iTunes. We're on Google Play. You can find us there. Leave us a review, the whole ordeal. And we're on social media. Give us a follow on Twitter, on Instagram, or like us on Facebook, Monday Night Tours, for all of that. And, of course, you can always go to MondayNightTours.com to find all of our past episodes, our social media accounts, the whole ordeal. And don't forget, January 1, we're going to be releasing our award show for the 1995 Monday Night Wars version of the award show. So anything from September 4th on, favorite feuds, worst feuds, best wrestler, worst wrestler, best gimmick, etc., etc. So, Merry Christmas once again. For Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you guys next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a wonderful Christmas and Tuesday, and see ya.